Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Tuesday, July 14th, 2026 episode of the Marco Geray Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's get the Tuesday program underway, as I've got lots to discuss with you as always. And I want to make one quick announcement that on Thursday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, President Trump will be holding a press conference addressed to the entire nation. Now, the topic at hand was not mentioned, so I'm not sure exactly what he's going to be discussing with us. But if I had to make a bet, I would have to say it's probably regarding the climate around the Iran war. And since, of course, this is where much of his focus has constantly been as of late, I would imagine he's going to be discussing this in some detail. He could also have an addendum for some of the SCOTUS rulings, perhaps, if we look at where things are going with the SAVE Act or new legislation regarding the birthright citizenship case. That could be a factor as well. I wouldn't count out also some discussion about the economy and AI as well, so be ready for all that. But overall, it's going to be a rah-rah speech from the president. It always is, no matter what it is. Trump is very showy, and he likes to obviously use that when he's speaking to the country. What are the positives? What are the strengths? Where are we going? He's very good at that. He's very good at that. But I think he also needs to update everybody as to where he sees this war going, what these objectives are of this war. And by the way, of his administration as well. What can we expect from President Trump's administration moving forward? Now, if he can do that in an articulate way, he can actually show us what he's doing, then I'd feel a little bit better going into the midterms. Unfortunately, I don't know if he will do that, but we'll see as time goes on. I want to begin today's show talking with everybody about Kevin Warsh, as he spoke today with the House Financial Services Committee, and he called inflation an unfair burden. I don't disagree with him, by the way. And I got to be honest with you, I like Kevin Warsh as of right now. Now, does that mean he's going to be great? I don't know, only time will tell. But what he's doing, he's dialing things back quite a bit. He's very Alan Greenspan-esque. And as you all remember, when President Reagan was working with Paul Volcker, he's working with Alan Greenspan during his administration, we saw one of the biggest booms in this country, and we have not seen anything like it since. We're talking 20 million jobs created in that 8-year span of time. We're talking about bringing down inflation significantly from where it was at, I believe it was 13.5% under Jimmy Carter's last year in office, and Reagan was able to bring that down to roughly around 4% inflation at the time. But we were dealing with a 1970s that was completely out of control. We had just gotten off the gold standard. Lots of government spending, funding a war, which we shouldn't have been involved in. Seems familiar, right? So I'm hoping that Kevin Warsh will make the proper evaluations and do the things necessary to bring down inflation. Now, the talk on inflation from him has been very tough. He also touted the strength of the U.S. economy right now and the benefits coming from business investments, particularly that involving AI. We know that the government has been very bullish on AI. We know that that's where lots of investment has been taking place. We see that with the weekly economic report I give you with the stock market numbers that, again, everybody is bullish right now on AI because AI is the future. There's no denying that. And I think Kevin Warsh sees that. He sees the investment into that, and the people want to see a big return from that. Now, I don't know if AI will be the end-all be-all. Obviously, it's going to be part of the future. Whether we like it or not, AI is going to be here to stay. How that turns out, how profitable that turns out to be, we have yet to see that. But I told you before, we need to get a grip on AI. And I'm not saying, folks, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I want to see people's individual data, personal data, stored on these large computers and these data centers and what have you, taking up lots of water or electricity away from the power grid. That's not what I'm saying to you. But what I am saying is that in terms of, for instance, using AI to benefit and to bolster work and output, that could be something very positive moving forward. That would give us a leg up. I don't want it to replace all jobs or wipe out all careers, but I think if we had it to aid and abet certain fields, that we can actually use it for something good. And by the way, we're always going to have certain types of jobs, but we are seeing a lot of these businesses starting to shift away from using workers and starting to rely heavily on AI. Now, whether that's a good or bad thing, that will only be determined by the company at hand and how successful they are moving forward. We know that Oracle laid off thousands of jobs this year. Amazon did the exact same thing. So we're seeing a big shift in the workforce. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I personally don't want to see people laid off. I don't. But we are going through a watershed moment in this country where we're heading full speed with this AI and believing that, yep, it's going to be the end-all be-all. It's going to do things that nobody else wants to do. I don't believe that's true, to be honest with you. And I got to tell you why. Sometimes when I'm using AI, like if I'm using a search engine and I ask Copilot or Grok or ChatGPT, I might ask it, for instance, print out the numbers of inflation over the last 50 years so I can see it in a chart for me. You have to really monitor your way through it. Now, sometimes it gives you the correct data. Sometimes it does not, by the way. I asked it to print out something about President Trump the other day, and it started going over President Biden. I said, whoa. I said, Joe Biden's not the president. Oh, you got me. You're right. And it responds to you like that. So it's not perfect. It's only going to be as good as the people that program it. Now, if you're working to crunch numbers, accounting and whatnot, and use it in a way where you can print out certain types of information to see how the company's working, how your numbers look, that could be a positive. This is where AI is good. And by the way, AI has been with us for a while. This isn't just something that was just thought up for the last couple of years. This has been with us for a while. We have these search engines. That's a part of AI. That's a part of artificial intelligence. I tell you the computer what to do, and you print it out for me. You give me that information. You find that information for me. It's just being fine-tuned to a higher degree. The problem is, can we make it profitable? Can we make it more efficient than actual human beings doing this job? Lots of people I've been listening to have been saying real human beings working these jobs, doing these things, tend to do better work. Now, some people will argue, well, AI can just continue to work, right? There is no break for AI. It just keeps crunching. You can find things faster. That may be true, again, to an extent. But it doesn't replace the overall experience of the worker itself. That's the way I view it. But he's very bullish on this AI. He understands that this is going to be bringing in lots of jobs. And we are going to see lots of jobs created with this because there's going to be lots of construction that goes along with it. We're probably talking about thousands of jobs just on one site. This is going to be massive. And by the way, if we can pull the right resource together, the necessary water, the electrical grid, of which we use to create that electricity, you're going to see lots of jobs being created when we put these sites up. But don't misunderstand me and think that, well, Gerace wants these data centers so they can, capture this information about us, spy on us. You know me, folks. I'm totally against all that. But I'm not against the type of automation that could help out, or, for instance, the way we use it in order to gather information about things about a company and what have you. That's where I would like to see this fine-tuned so that we can become more efficient. That would be good. But I do not want it to just replace an entire career sector or what have you. That's simply not what I would like to see. That being said, Warsh is now talking about creating 5 task forces, which he has created to look at all the aspects about how the Fed conducts business. And what he had said was, in 6 weeks, we have caused, I think, a sea change in new thinking, the beginning a set of reforms that are going to be put in place across at least 5 dimensions in monetary policy. We made a lot of progress in 6 weeks, but I think it's important to use this opportunity wisely. So he's going over a couple different aspects of how the Fed's going to be working. Certainly the number one objective is to get the monetary policy right. That's first and foremost. We haven't had this in quite some time. Now, the way he's going to focus on this, I believe he'll focus heavily on the interest rate strategy, obviously the balance sheet management, reforms and task forces within there. So we're looking at communications, technology, the balance sheet operations, economic data collection, inflation measurement, and policy design. All of these different things he's going to look at to say, we got to bring this inflation down, because he wisely said that inflation is a tax. And he's absolutely right. When we see the inflation going up, that is a tax on you, the consumer. You are paying more for the same amount of goods. It's a hidden tax. That's what Ronald Reagan said. Kevin Warsh said it. He's right. Absolutely right. So I'm glad to hear that he's within the reality of the economy. But we've got to figure out a way to bring this down now. How's he going to reach that benchmark of 2%? Because right now we're sitting at, from at least the June numbers that I've seen thus far, inflation went down slightly to 3.5%, but it's still nowhere near the goal of 2%. And I believe those numbers will go up because we've seen the resuming of this war with Iran. It's going to be a big hit. I think he understands this. But we've seen inflation surge in the last 5 years because of, number one, the pandemic, all the money that was spent for that, all the money that was spent on these COVID shots. And nobody asked. Well, some people asked for it. Not many people, though. But that, we saw the transfer of wealth going from, really the top 1% in that case. And by the way, I'm not trying to be Bernie Sanders here. I'm just telling you the way it is. The people that made out during COVID, during the lockdowns, were the wealthiest people in this country. That's just a truism, folks. You can't get away from that. And we saw how the draconian policies, like in my great state of California, how Gavin Newsom used his might to make sure that things were closed. Schools were closed. Small businesses were closed. Just totally squeezing the life out of the state, and it never recovered after that, unfortunately. We saw small business after small business, restaurants were under siege, and Gavin Newsom couldn't give less than a damn. So long as his restaurant was open, and that winery that he owns. I wonder how he got that money, by the way. I'd love to know that. Who was the benefactor for Gavin Newsom, that he was able to keep his business open, everyone else had to shut theirs down? Hypocrisy, folks, is a terrible, terrible thing. But here we go. Let's take a look at, again, what Kevin Warsh is probably going to be doing. The two most important policy approaches, I would have to say, is managing the interest rates. Now, this is going to be very, very crucial for several different reasons. Because this marker, of which he utilizes, is going to be the tool that brings everything down. Now, to me, when you have inflation rising, you're going to have to do higher interest rates. You're going to have to raise it. That's the only way you're going to start bringing that down. Unless, of course, we cut massive spending, which, Congress is never, ever going to do. Unfortunately. So I think what he's indicating here is that he's going to start raising interest rates probably by the next time he has a meeting with the Fed. And we will see those rates increase. That's just going to be the way it works, unfortunately. But definitely tighter monetary policy. Again, I think what he's going to do with the bank sheets, probably lower the liquidities. And the reason why he's going to do that is because if there's less money out there, again, if the Fed is just printing money, allowing people to more easily borrow money, the longer the inflation stays. That's just the way it works. And by the way, during COVID, we had almost, 0% interest rates? It was just dramatically dropped, so it was just cheaper to borrow money, which Trump liked. Because, again, more money out there, more people are spending, makes the economy look better, right? But when you add the inflation to it then, under Trump, we had very, very low inflation. What we got under Joe Biden was roughly 25 to 30% inflation over the 4 years of which he was in office, from 2021 to 2025, January. So Warsh is going to have to take a much more disciplined approach to the framework here, and I think we will see very soon he will raise the interest rates. Now, how much? Depends on how high the inflation is. So if the inflation stays at 3.5%, which again, I think it's going to begin to go up soon, once again for July, because we're seeing the price of oil go up again. Oil usually offshoots to everything else. So we're seeing the core price index go up. You're going to see the inflation shoot up, absolutely. But if we get to like a 4% inflation again, he's going to probably have to raise it significantly to combat that. So if it's 4%, he's going to have to make it 5%. It's 4.2%, it's going to be 5.2%. And if we get into that range, though, we're going to see the economy begin to struggle. So it's probably going to get much, much worse before it gets much, much better, unfortunately. But sometimes that's the route you have to take. That's the way you got to. And by the way, Reagan did this during his first term. Once he got Paul Volcker on board, yes, for a while, the economy struggled. It's not, again, a quick fix. But once it got going, once he started implementing some of these policies, of which he studied, by the way, when he was in college, Reagan decided, hey, let's try this approach. Let's try that approach. What did it lead to? A massive boom in this country. You saw the average middle-class person raising, of which they bring home every single year. And it increased from anywhere between 20 and 50,000, depending on where you stood in the economic ladder. But everyone's take-home pay increased under the Reagan years. That's just true. But we saw massive growth, 20 million jobs. You saw massive GDP in this country. I think in 1984, he had 7.4% GDP growth. I mean, just insanity. I mean, I'd love us to get to 7.4% right now. That's a sign of a strong economy. But we're not seeing that right now. We're far too low in our GDP because we're not producing as much. It's a completely different country, if you want to think of it that way. But I would hope if Kevin Warsh can encourage President Trump to invest in the United States, actually invest, to cut the corporate tax rate, cut tax rates just in general, cut the red tape, let's get people investing here in the United States, owned by the United States, this would be something positive. We've really abandoned this. I believe at our peak we had 19.6, if I'm not mistaken, million manufacturing jobs. That means we are producing right here in the United States. We are far away from that. I think we've lost, I think we're down to like 11.5, maybe. And those numbers always change constantly too, folks. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. So we're in a range of which we're not really producing like we ought to be. And if we want to get a strong middle class, like we saw during the 1980s, then you would obviously look for that policy. We need to get manufacturing back here, right here inside the United States. I hope Trump can do this. I really do. I pray for this, folks. I really do. I pray that they will work on this together. We'll figure this out. Warsh makes sense of everything, and we bring that inflation down, and we raise the GDP. We raise the take-home pay. We cut more taxation, not raise it. And we really save this economy from where it is right now, because right now we're not doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Now, I say this to you. I say this to you because, again, why is the inflationary rate rising? And the reason for that, of course, is because of this war we're finding ourselves into yet again. Now, Trump also has to understand this, and by the way, this is out of the Hill. The majority of Americans anticipate that the war in Iran will stretch on amid renewed military operations. And what Reuters has now figured out was that 79% of the overall respondents believe that the United States military will remain engaged in a conflict for a quote-unquote extended period of time. Now, this is a significant jump from 65%, who was asked the same exact question in March of this year. Some 18% of the respondents suggested that they believe the war will end pretty quickly, in a matter of weeks. Those people can be found in a state hospital. Just thought I'd share that with you. I speak in jest, but really, folks, this is going to go on for quite some time. It's not going to end very quickly because there is no end in sight. We have no objectives in this. In fact, if Trump has a new objective that he discusses with us on Thursday evening, then I'd be open to hear what he has to say. What's the objective? The objective should always be clear from day one, why we got into this war in the first place. Well, we know because Marco Rubio let the cat out of the bag, we wanted regime change. We're not going to get that. No matter what Trump says, I've taken out the first wing, the second string, the third, this and that. First of all, the exact same players, aside from the Ayatollah, besides some of the IRGC members, are all still in their positions of power. You have the same president. You have the same foreign minister. You have the same people in these positions. So the whole government hasn't been wiped out, and new people have been elected. Some have. But certainly, of course, not everybody. So when he comes out and says, well, I've taken out the first line of the government, and the second, well, if you did that, we'd have regime change, wouldn't we? The government would collapse on itself. But now we have a new Ayatollah. He's a much more hardliner. He's obviously going to be much more, I guess you'd want to say, conservative is what he does, in terms of, we're not going to make these deals with the United States anymore. Obviously, because you killed his father. That took place too. Certainly not a positive aspect moving forward with the negotiations. But this is where we find ourselves, folks. This is where everything turns out to. Now, along party lines, 91% of Democrats, 69% of Republicans saying that they expect the conflict to stretch on, and yes, it will. Additionally, only 37% of respondents said that they approved of the war. That's a big hit. That's a very low approval rating. We're getting to Vietnam-era levels as far as people that approve of this war. It's not a popular war because people don't understand why we're in this war to begin with. Now, some people will argue with me and say, well, Gerais, this is about the nuclear weaponry. We can't get Iran to get a nuclear weapon. I say fine. But what is the purpose of killing the Ayatollah, who was issuing 2 fatwas back in 2003, clearly stating that the Iranian government will not create a nuclear weapon? I mean, again, why would you take him out? Why wouldn't you just negotiate with him? Instead, you've assassinated him. You martyred him. You got the people in Iran so pissed off at the United States now. Now you have a whole new younger generation that has witnessed this, that have seen people getting killed by our attacks, by our missiles, both Israel and the United States. And they can't figure out why these people say death to America, which of course they mean death to the American government, not to American citizens. It's important to understand that distinction. We've got to get our priorities straight. This was a grave misstep by the United States, 100%. We expected regime change in 5 days, didn't happen. And then after that, we just kept talking about nuclear technology again. Well, they don't have a nuclear weapon. And how do I know that? Because our own CIA has said exactly that. Tulsi Gabbard said the exact same thing. They don't have a nuclear weapon. They're not building a nuclear weapon. And by the way, Mr. President, you said that we had destroyed their entire nuclear program last June, which again, there's no evidence they were even developing a nuclear weapon then. So what is the objective? 1 minute where we've got to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. The next minute, the nuclear dust is obliterated. It's destroyed. It's totally buried under the ground. Then why are you bombing them? Why are you bombing these sites if they don't even have access to it? And how could they be building a nuclear weapon if the highly enriched uranium is buried so deep underground they can't even get access to it? So we go in circles with this. It just goes in circles. 1 minute it's a regime change. The next minute it's the nuclear dust. The next minute is they can't get a nuclear weapon. Then it's about the Strait of Hormuz, which was open prior to our invasion on February the 28th of this year. So there's all this going back and forth. And people are just saying to themselves, why are we here right now? Why are we doing this to ourselves? This is destroying the economy. It's not helping the economy. So what does a win look like? Nobody seems to be able to tell us. That's why I believe you're seeing this small number of people that believe that this is a positive war. It's simply not, folks. It's just simply not. It's not popular. People don't want this. And I'd be willing to bet more people than just the 37% that approve of it don't want this. They want this to be over with. Now, I will say this to you. Again, moving forward, since we're, again, talking about this, we have to talk about the new approach by President Trump. This is really, really ridiculous. Because now the approach is, well, we've got to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. We've got to take control of it. He even at one point suggested that the United States should take control of the Strait of Hormuz. This is true, folks. And that we should be charging a toll in order to be present in the region. And by doing so, we'll make a lot of money off this. And we don't need it, but we should be doing this. This is what he said just yesterday in the Oval Office. Take a listen to clip one.
I want to be reimbursed because we're protecting a very rich portion of the world. We're spending money. And so what we've done is we are going to be reimbursed for protection. We're protecting by the countries that we're helping. For instance, you look at the 5 countries. You have Saudi Arabia, you have UAE, you have Qatar, or Qatar as I always say, you have Qatar, Bahrain, and by the way, you have others. You have Kuwait, and you have others, and they will do very well. But we think it's appropriate that we don't need them. You know, we have more oil than any other country in the world. When you add Venezuela, which has been amazing, which has tremendous amounts of oil that we control.
There's so much there to unpack because it's just a bunch of nonsense. So now our goal in the region is we've got to be reimbursed because we're keeping it open. Ladies and gentlemen, this would never have happened if we had not invaded in the first place. The Iranians said specifically, and I know this because I talked about this on my program going back into early February. I know I was talking about this. I said, if we go in, if we start this war, which we have no means to do so, we don't have any real objectives. I said the Iranians will close down the Strait of Hormuz. I said this very clearly. And people brush off, there's no way they'll do that. Well, they did it. They did it right away. And that created this economic turmoil in the region. We saw, for instance, obviously the oil sales begin to plummet, which again was offshooting this supply chain right here in the United States. Yeah, we have that problem too. So why he's saying, well, we don't really need it. Yeah, actually we do. We need that oil because we're not getting any coming in. That's where we're getting our heavy crude oil from, largely in part. Now we get some from Canada, for instance. We also now get some from Venezuela. But the Venezuelans aren't producing quite enough, and it takes longer to refine because it's the heaviest crude oil in the world. The crude that we were getting out of the Middle East was much more easy to refine, and as a result of it, we were keeping our supply chain. It was working for us. The oil we drill for inside the United States, and by the way, we drill a lot of oil. We are the number one producer of oil in the world. More than Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, all these countries, Kuwait, you name it, we produce far more. But the problem is we're producing the sweet crude, the lighter density crude that we drill here in the United States. That's all we don't have this heavy crude, and we need the heavy crude for diesel fuel so we can power our 18-wheelers. We can power our tractors and what have you so we can have crops in this country. What are we going to do without that? And we also use it for jet fuel. So how are we going to fly planes around if we don't have this steady flow of crude coming in, this heavy crude oil? Right now, we're just depleting our reserves. And it gets lower and lower every single week. And right now, we're at a tipping point because we're at the point where if we start to go below 270 million barrels of oil and continue to drain that, God forbid our country was attacked, we wouldn't have the proper means in order to facilitate our warships or planes. This would be very problematic, folks. It puts us in a grave, vulnerable position should that ever happen, if that were to happen. So we're playing with fire right now. So right now where people are going, oh, everything's great. We still have this oil flowing in. The gas prices at the sea, Joyce, the gas prices are coming down is because the Strait opened right up and everything's great. But we're not getting that sweet crude out of the Persian Gulf. Quite the opposite. We've got all this sweet crude. But because we have, again, had this a blockade on the blockade now, which again, I can't figure this one out. We don't have the proper oil going to other parts of the country. So what happens to those futures? What happens to the price of Brent crude? What happens to the price of West Texas Intermediate or Murbain crude or Dubai crude or Indian crude or any of these other companies? The price has got to go up, folks. Supply and demand. If you choke off 34% of the global oil supply, and it's barely moving now because of our decision to go in and start bombing Iran with zero pretext, you have a supply and demand issue. Economics 101. That's why I harp on this with you so much. I want people to understand this. If we continue to do this, and if we continue to play around with this stupid naval blockade now, which we're reinstating as of late, we're going to have lots of problems globally. And it's not just going to be inside the United States. It's going to be all over the world. Asia, Europe alike. But now I'm looking at this article in the Wall Street Journal. It says President Trump's new plan to wrest control of the Strait of Hormuz by resuming strikes and reimposing the blockade in his third major shift in military strategy as he searches for a way to turn the tables on Iran in nearly the 5-month-old war. So let me explain this to you. Why this doesn't make any sense. We've tried this before. We've tried the air and missile attacks. It didn't work. We've tried the naval blockade. That didn't work. We know, for instance, Iranian ships were still able to get through. Now, of course, we did stop some, but we weren't stopping all of them. And you, my wonderful listeners, you hear the real information, not just what people want you to hear. The Iranians are able to use their ingenuity by land routes now. We've got 6 different transportation routes just going into Pakistan to the east, which also feeds into India, by the way. There's certain corridors that go into India as well through Pakistan. They can go through the north, through the Caspian Sea, into Russia, sell oil that way, get that on the market. And they also have the Belt and Road Initiative to the north by the Turkmenistan border to ship by railway oil directly into China. It actually gets in there faster now versus using the sea lanes. So the Iranians have a great amount of way in which they can get this oil out, still sell their oil. But what about the countries that rely on these oil tankers coming from, again, Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE? What happens to these countries? What happens to them? What do they do? They're in trouble. So we're putting up a blockade and saying we're going to open up the strait, but we have no military means in order to do so, because if we did, we would have done it by now. So what we're doing is we're trying these old tricks. We're trying, okay, we'll just bomb them. We'll bomb this. We'll bomb that again. We'll keep bombing these sites. I pray to God the Iranians just say, uncle. It's not going to work. And again, I think Trump understands that he doesn't have the means to do this, because today he rescinded his remarks from yesterday where he said, well, we'll have a 20% toll. So wait a minute. When the Iranians were discussing charging a toll system, it was completely unconstitutional in the sense of international law. I say unconstitutional. It's illegal, is what I'm trying to say to you. So it's illegal if the Iranians are doing it, but the United States can come into a sector of the world and impose our own tariff system now and control a strait that is not in international waters, but it's in territorial waters, both of Oman and Iran itself. It's amazing to me. So when we do it, it's okay. When Iran does it, it's illegal. And then international law comes into play. We cannot be hypocrites, folks. We cannot. It's territorial waters, and the Iranians, yes, they can control the strait. And they will control the strait. They've said this much as of late. But here's Trump today, now refuting what he said just yesterday. Take a listen.
So when I put that out yesterday, because we've been doing that for many, many years, it was never fair to me that we would be guarding the strait when we basically don't take anything. We don't need the oil at all. And it wasn't important for us, but it was important for allies. It was important for people that we get along with very well, including the major Gulf state countries. So I put it out yesterday. I thought it was good. I was called by different people, different countries, kings and emirs and all of the people that we all know and we all love, and they've been very strong partners. And they said, we'd love to do it a different way. We'd love to invest in the United States with billions and billions of dollars and continue our record setting, because there's never been a time like this with the United States, with the factories, with the plants, with everything else. And we would like to invest tremendously in the United States as opposed to charging a fee. And I like that, actually, because I don't think anybody should be able to charge a fee for the strait or for any other strait relationship in terms of other sections of the world. I don't think anybody should be really in that position. But we were doing it as a reimbursement. The Gulf states are going to invest a tremendous amount of money into the United States, and that was very satisfactory to me. I think it's actually much better.
This is amazing to me. Yesterday was okay if we had a toll system charging 20% fees of, I don't know what, how much cargo's on the vessel. So it's okay if we did it, but if the Iranians were charging $2 million per ship, and of course it was illegal, violates international law, which, by the way, it didn't. It wouldn't. It's territorial waters. You don't believe me? Go look it up. That's the law, folks. I've read it to you on the program several times in the past. The Iranians, if they wanted to implement this, they could. We see this with the Suez Canal, with Egypt. We see this with the Panama Canal, with the Panamanians. They do it. It's an international waterway. It's a way for ships to get through. But if the Iranians decide to do this, all of a sudden it's illegal. How dare they? Then he goes in to say, we'll do it. We'll do it. We'll be reimbursed. Reimbursed for what? You started the war. It was a war that was poorly strategized. It was poorly planned. We didn't have an end goal. We thought We'd get a regime change, which is what Netanyahu wanted, but it didn't happen. Now we're going in, we're depleting our missiles, we're depleting our stockpiles, we're going through old tricks to see if we find some way to leverage ourselves up a little bit more, but it's not working because the Iranians have 4 more drones and missiles still left than we do. That's the truth of the matter. That's the fact. We can't get around that. And so we're trying to bomb different things now, right? We're trying to bomb this location, that location. It's not going to work. That's why he was talking about bombing desalination plants, but I'm sure someone grabbed him and said, Mr. President, the Iranians only rely on 8% of their overall drinking water by desalination, whereas Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they have no fresh running water. They rely like 80, 90% on their desalination. Not the same. They have different, they have different means to get more water, fresh water into the country, utilize it. They have the aquifers, you name it, they've got it. So it wouldn't be that big of a hit if the Iranians were to lose their desalination. It's not going to work. So we're out of ideas, but we're going to try to bomb yet again. They tried to bomb the Belt and Road over the weekend. And what happened? The Iranians got their engineers out. They fixed the track. They fixed the line that day within hours. So we've got problems on our hands because if we think that we're just going to bomb our way through this, folks, through an air campaign, it simply just isn't going to work. Now, there's discussion of taking Kark Island. There's discussion of, again, militarily taking over the Strait of Hormuz by the same old people. And one of them, of course, is General Jack Keane, folks. General Jack Keane never saw war he didn't want to go into, but that's why he's keen on war. I think that's a very fitting name, don't you? General Keen on war. That's all he talks about, is much, much more war, just like Heath Kellogg, these other talking heads. But how are we going to implement this? They never give you the reason of how we can do this. And if we could have done this before, why haven't we done it? Why has it taken 5 months now to get this working? To, so-called finish the job. Does anyone want to try to answer that one for me? Again, folks, I'm taking this approach from a realistic position. If we could have done this before, why haven't we? But yet here they are. Again, he's on Fox Business telling Stuart Varney we could do this when he's asked, can we take over the Strait of Hormuz and control it? Take a listen.
Yeah, most definitely. What we're seeing before our eyes here, Stuart, is the battle for the Straits of Hormuz. And the Iranians literally blew up the MOU because the only deal that was in the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that the president signed on June the 17th, was over the Straits of Hormuz. We were going to disestablish our blockade so ships could flow, and they were going to stop controlling ships flowing themselves. And what did they do? They began to direct ships and maintain control of the straits, and then they fired on ships that were not abiding by their directions. So here we are. The battle for the Straits of Hormuz is here. The United States will win this battle. We're conducting 2 kinds of attacks on the Iranians, one focusing on the Straits of Hormuz and everything that would influence their interfering with shipping in the straits. And obviously that's drones, it's short-range missiles, it's anti-ship missiles, it's radar, it's command and control, it's fast boats, the list goes on. But we're also attacking ballistic missiles and launch systems because Iran is using that to retaliate against the Gulf states, potentially U.S. bases, potentially Israel, who they have not attacked over the Straits of Hormuz yet, but certainly that potential is there.
He offers no solution. He just says a lot of things, but it doesn't stick. Oh, we're bombing here, we're bombing this site, we're bombing that site. They have sites all over the place. We don't know where all their sites are. So we're bombing these targets in which we believe they're using, and then, of course, we see them firing from them later on. That's how it works. But here's the question. How are we going to get our ships close enough to the Strait of Hormuz? He's talking about demining and all this other nonsense. How are we going to get our ships this close if they can be struck by drones and missiles alike? And by the way, what happens when we do that? Do we just keep our ships parked there? What do we do? How do we ensure? How do we let Lloyd's of London know that, yes, your ships of which you insure can safely traverse the Strait of Hormuz? What can we give you? In other words, we can't give them any offering. We tried this before. I think we had 2 vessels. The last time we did Operation Project Freedom that we were going to escort ships through, we had, I think, 2 vessels that we tried to get through. And we decided to pull back on that really quickly because nobody bought that. I think we tried to get 2 ships through and it didn't even work. And we said, oh, well, we're done with this. Now time to move on. Well, no kidding. No kidding. We don't have the means to do it. And if our ships get close enough, that's why our ships are sitting so far away, I believe 500 to 700 miles away from the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz, because we don't want our vessels to get hit. And I don't blame us. Why would we want to lose our vessels? But right now we're seeing oil beginning to shoot up again, right? Brent crude right now is at $85.43 per barrel today. West Texas Intermediate is just under $80 per barrel. Both of them are up significantly from where they were a week ago. And I suspect this is only going to continue to go up as time goes on. Because now we have supply chain issues. Now we're going to have issues with our reserves. And as that reality sets in, then you have investors on Wall Street saying, oh, we've got a problem now. Oh, we don't have the oil. We're not refining anything. That means the price is going to go up significantly. And I think it will eventually reach the $130, $140, $150 at least per barrel. I do believe that is happening right now. Financial Times has stated today that oil is peaking at around $87 per barrel. So this is, in the battle for the Strait of Hormuz, this is alarming the energy systems. No doubt about it. No doubt. And it's only going to go up. And as that number goes up, as that supply begins to drop, we're going to have problems on our hand. Either we have diesel fuel or we have jet fuel moving forward. You can't have both at the same time. And if we're digging week after week in our depleted reserves, how long does that last? If Trump decides just to continue on with this, we have till mid-August to get diesel fuel? Then how are we going to plant crops? How are we going to do that? How are we going to get tractor trailers shipping goods to the stores so we can buy them? Gas prices are going to go up significantly, folks. Significantly. And it's going to be a very, very big shock to many people. But again, that's why you listen to my show. Okay. And one more thing just regarding the Iran war. Actually, yeah. One more thing that's important. And I have a little addendum after we discuss this. This comes from the Telegragh. Now we have Saudi Arabia entering on this new front. What Trump was saying, though, in the last audio clip I played for you, he's talking about now that the Gulf Arab states, the 5 states of which we have military bases in, will now start to invest in the United States? Really? After oil refineries have been hit, after infrastructure has been hit, our military bases in those sites were hit, obviously. So they're going to now say because their economy is struggling, they're now going to invest in the United States? I'd love to know who's going to invest in that. What moron is going to invest in the United States after we allow this to happen? We have countries that rely heavily on imports for food, for water, for goods, because they just don't produce it there. What country is now going to invest in the United States after this? I really would like to know who's doing this, by the way. I can't imagine it'd be Saudi Arabia. I got to be honest with you. I doubt Saudi Arabia, who, by the way, still hasn't given us the $1 trillion they've pledged last year to President Trump, especially when their overall GDP every year is $1.24 trillion. Remember, folks, I've said this to you? I said a lot of these countries have pledged lots and lots of money to the United States. And I use Saudi Arabia as an example. I said Saudi Arabia, every year, their GDP, what they produce inside their country, is $1.24 trillion. How the hell would they give us $1 trillion off the start? It's impossible. They can't do it. It's got to be over a long period of time. And by the way, we've seen not a dime, not a penny of any of that money, of that 18 to whatever it was, $21 trillion, depending on who you speak to. And I know because I continued to look up, I said, have we got any X, Y, and Z money from such and such? Nope. Have we gotten this investment? Nope. Has South Korea? Nope. How about Japan? Nope. So where's this money? Again, by the way, if we had $18 trillion of investment anywhere, by the way, even if it was several billions of dollars, that would really grow the economy because, again, you have the building, rebuilding, restarting, you have investments coming in. You've got lots of capital coming in the United States. We aren't seeing that. So nothing has been invested in. We've got pledges, But where is the investment? Let's see it. I mean, I'd love to see it, by the way. And that's why when he was talking about this, I said, this is going to be great. If we actually got this 18 or $21 trillion of investments in the United States, it's going to be a boom like we've never seen. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that, but yet he's saying our manufacturing has never been this big, with the plants, with the buildings, with the construction. No, yes, it has. Our manufacturing numbers are in the toilet compared to where it was just some 46 years ago. We're nowhere near that high peak of 19.6 million manufacturing jobs in this country. So, you know, that by the way, the 80s was the start of that. And of course, Billy Clinton decided to really just put a hatchet to it with his NAFTA, with his, bringing China into the World Trade Organization, all that, the outsourcing of our jobs in the 1980s and the 1990s. But again, it accelerated highly under Billy Clinton. But this is a problem. So we're not there yet. We're not getting those investments. And by the way, do you think these countries are going to invest in us now when they've been bombarded? When their access to produce for themselves oil, which is a high commodity in these countries? They're going to say, oh yeah, let's invest in the United States that never even consulted with us at the start of this war. Just decided to go in. We're getting struck for 40 days. And now they're going to invest in the United States. Who believes this? Come on. Be honest with yourself. Who really believes this? Who is making this pledge? They're going to start investing in the United States because we allow them to be bombed? What is the reciprocation with this? They got bombed, so they're going to invest in the United States? What, do we protect them in any way? We left them to hang high and dry in all these Gulf Arab states. According to what I've heard, Mohammed bin Salman was pretty pissed off, by the way, that Saudi Arabia was getting hit now. And of course, their access to the Strait was cut off. They do have a pipeline, though, that brought them to the Red Sea. But I'll explain to you momentarily why this might not be for much longer as well. So the Saudis have now decided to open up a new front in this war against Iran, which they're going to have to spend their own money on, folks, by the way, which I'm sure they're not pleased about. But they decided to bomb the Sanaz airport in Yemen. They decided to do this. And the strike on Monday damaged the runway and prevented an Iranian airliner from landing in the Yemeni capital, which is controlled by the Houthis. So the bombing of the airport was then claimed by the internationally recognized Yemeni government themselves. So this isn't just the Houthis talking about this, which again is more or less a proxy of Riyadh, right? So you got to understand something. Inside of Yemen, you have the Houthis, who are a separate rebel group, a military proxy, if you will, of Iran, and of course their campaign, if you will. And then you have the actual government inside of Yemen, in Aden, right, their capital, that is, again, highly influenced and backed by Riyadh, right? That's how it works. So now you've got this happening. You've got this going, and by the way, they have a history of going back and forth with the war, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, by the way, just so we understand this. So there's a lot of back and forth happening now. But here's the problem. If you continue to attack the Houthis, conducting these strikes against them, what you're going to have now is a problem, because what the Houthis can do in return, what they can do, should they choose to, they can decide to shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This is a strait between Yemen and Djibouti in Africa. Very, very narrow corridor, which connects the Red Sea into the Gulf of Aden, which again can bring you to the Arabian Sea and obviously out to transport wherever you're going. And this can be detrimental, by the way, to the Egyptians, because why would you pay to go through the Suez Canal only to find yourself trapped in the Red Sea just to sit there? So it's gonna choke off a lot of this sea lanes. I don't think many ships want to go travel around the Horn of Africa. Just thought I'd share that with you. So that's going to take the travel much, much longer. And then, of course, you have the Egyptians that are going to be losing out on money, too, because no one's going to take that route. No one's going to go there. They're going to have to go all the way around the Cape of Good Hope just to get around to Asia. That's going to be wonderful, folks. So we have two problems on our hands now. Now we've got the Strait of Hormuz closed, effectively by the Iranians. They're controlling it right now. And now we may have the Bab el-Mandeb Strait also choked out, closed. the Houthis can close that down, and they can also continue to fire in on Saudi Arabia as well. Now, the following day, the Yemeni government said that the Iranian regime's operations of a direct flight, to Sanas had been a flagrant violation of Yemen's sovereignty. There we go. So, again, expect the bombing to go back and forth between, where are we here? In Yemen. We're talking about, Hodeidah, yeah, if you pronounce it like the airport itself, and the city that goes along with it on the coast. And then you've got, for instance, they can bomb cities in Saudi Arabia like Yanbu, again, which is on the water inside of the Red Sea, around the western side of the Arabian Peninsula. This is going to be going back and forth, so they can send bombs into this port city, they can send bombs into this area. It's going to be a mess, is what I'm trying to tell you. And I expect this to go on. I really do. And this is going to be bad for the Egyptians. It's going to be bad for people that trade through these routes. It's going to cost a lot more money because now you have to purchase more fuel to get your travel, which, again, going all the way around Africa is going to cost a hell of a lot more money. It's going to take a hell of a lot longer as well. So you've got extended routes and extended fuel charges. Wonderful. What are we doing, folks? Again, I say this to be honest with you. I don't lie to you. I tell you how things are. I can tell you this is a great campaign by the United States, how wonderful it is. We're definitely going to get in this time. We're going to ramp this up because we can't allow the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon. Now, I could tell you that. You could eat that up, right? But is that the truth? Where do we stand in terms of our economy? We're making things much, much worse for the global economy. We are choking off 2 strategic sea lanes. For what? For what? Really? For what? Do we expect regime change from this? Do we expect the Iranians to stop and say, yes, you can come in and control the strait? Or no, we won't control it with fees? Again, the future of the strait belongs to the Iranians. I stand by that claim. I believe that. And I think that's just going to be the way things work from here on out. So that's going to be a big problem. If we cut off another crucial waterway for the Saudis, that's going to be problematic for them. We do get oil from the Saudis, so that's going to be a major problem. I don't think we want that, folks. Just thought I'd share that with you. So when Trump says we don't need it, yeah, we do need it. That's where we get oil from. We get our heavy crude oil, again, from Venezuela, from Canada, and from the Persian Gulf. So yes, we do need this. Yes, we do need this. And I can't imagine the Saudis would be very happy about this. I just can't imagine they'd be happy. Again, the UAE, I can't imagine them being happy. Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait. I just can't picture they're happy about all this because this puts their country in danger and it puts their economies in ruins. So there's that. Not a shock, of course, ladies and gentlemen, but I guess this is our thinking moving forward. This time it'll work, even though we know it's not going to. You heard it from me first, folks, so don't forget that. All right, let's move on to another important topic. We've got this coming from Fox News today. The newly minted Senator Darlene Graham, who will now succeed her brother, Lindsay Graham, which I think is a bit weird, to be honest with you. We've never seen anything quite like this, where we have a sister taking upon her brother's position in the Senate. She has no political experience, as far as I can tell, from what it looks like to me. She has a degree in sociology, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. She doesn't come from a political background, or obviously her brother did. He was a lawyer, served in the military for, 33 years, was obviously entrenched in politics since 1995, if I'm not mistaken. So he's been there for quite some time. Okay, Lindsey Graham is not his sister, obviously. But why are we putting her in this position? Now, I know people will retort back to me and say, well, Jerace, the governor, can appoint whoever he'd like. And I say, sure he can. But shouldn't he be putting someone there with some political clout, some political experience? Maybe even the person who will be likely to succeed the former senator, come this November? Shouldn't that be the approach we take? Or at least someone in that position that has some political prowess. Now, I'm sure many people feel this is a nice gesture. Of course, it sounds very nice, doesn't it? We've seen this in the past with wives succeeding their husbands. That has been a thing, but we've never seen a sibling do this. So, obviously, I know Lindsay Graham was not married, so maybe this is the next best approach they feel to honor him, as he was the senator since, I believe, 2003, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 2003. He's been the senator out of South Carolina. Now, she made a comment. She said, Lindsay had always been there for me, and now I will be there for him. Okay. My brother was the most amazing person, outstanding leader, and just a genuinely good human being. Okay. Excuse me, good man, rather. All right. So, there's that, folks. I don't believe she'll run. I don't believe that. I would imagine it'd probably be a Nancy Mace. She has already sparked that interest in doing so, and she comes from the Congress as well, so she would probably have a pretty big leg up. I don't believe she'll run. I just don't understand why we would put her in this position. Darlene Graham. I don't know why we would do this. But again, this is what McMaster's wanted, so this is what he got. I guess this is the way we're going to go moving forward. Oh, and by the way, folks, coming out of the great city of New York, no shortage of chaos there as well. Let's move up a little bit on the eastern seaboard. The Sun of the New York Post says, New York sees a dramatic exodus of millionaires. Who called this back in December? I said when Mum Dummy was elected. I said, what's going to happen in New York City? You're going to see lots of people beginning to flee because of all these taxes of which he wants to impose on pretty much everybody. Free this, free that, free haircut, free grocery store, whatever the hell he wants to make up at any given moment. But now what they figured out was that New York's share of U.S. millionaires has dramatically declined in recent years. Not just from Mum Dummy himself, but going back several decades even. And it's nearly cost New York State, particularly New York City, though, at least $11 billion in losses and a much-needed tax revenue in just 1 year. This is according to a new bombshell analysis released by the Citizen Budget Commission, comes amid fears that the socialist, he's not a socialist, he's a communist, Mayor Zoran Mum Dummy, to push the tax the rich scheme, of which all communists do, which will then indeed drive more wealthy taxpayers and their businesses and their revenues out of New York City, probably for Florida, if I have to make a guess, maybe Texas, who knows? But a much freer state, absolutely, 100%. Why would you put up with this nonsense? If you're that wealthy, if you can afford millions of dollars, right, that you have at your own disposal, why would you sit there and pay it to New York City, which is becoming a bigger and bigger cesspool every single year? I don't know why you would do that, to be honest with you. Why would you want to stay in a climate where you have a out-of-control mayor, an out-of-control city council, these out-of-control congressional leaders in the boroughs and what have you, that do everything they can to stifle your business? You wouldn't want to do that. Now, even before Mum Dummy took office of the largest city in the Empire State in the country, the nation's millionaires dipped from 12.7% to 8.7% just between 2010 and 2023, the largest decline of any state. This, again, was according to various surveys. But now we've got New York's declining share of the high-income payers, the taxpayers, if you will, and that's going to have a meaningful consequence on the state. Well, again, no kidding. It has to have that. You got many business leaders, you have many experts now warning that if Mum Dummy's stick it to the rich tax policy in his dreams continues, you're going to see a lot of people dipping out of the big orange. That's the way it's going to go. Now, Kathy Hochul's trying to, play opposite here, saying she doesn't want to do these tax hikes. This is what Mum Dummy wants to do, folks, and this is why he's going to drive out a lot of these taxpayers. This is going to be very detrimental for New York. I'm out of time, folks. Thank you again for being here. Always stay prepped. As always, enjoy the rest of the day. I'll see you back here tomorrow, as always. Until then, be good, stay busy. God bless.